Most of us have 10 fingers and toes. 10 to the power. That is the way they express very large numbers, isn't it? To the 10th power. We know to add all those extra zeros and things to them. I love the tipping thing because tips are, 15, 18%? I do 20% because it's easier. It's easier to just do 20%. 10, do it twice, right? 10 is a very powerful number. It's also something that has some spiritual significance to it. You may be familiar with the idea of a tithe. Tithe is 10%, I think, in Hebrew. It's spoken of in the Bible a lot. And it's the first 10% of the crops or 10% of the income that is given back to the king, the pharaoh, the landowner, given back to God, right? That's what the Bible says. Give it back to God. Does God need our money? Did God create money? Yeah. So I think there's some misinterpretations there. Has anybody ever felt beat up by tithing, by the idea of tithing? Many of us came from faith traditions where it was demanded, right? I was taught it as a child in the Methodist church. It was taught at the church level, and it was taught at Sunday school. It was taught by my mother. My mother was a large tither. And she tithes time, talent, and money to the church. My dad always had the opinion that all the church wants is your money. You ever heard that? Ever felt that? Right? Yeah. And so we get a little mixed up in that whole thing about tithing and forced to be tithing and the guilt that can be associated with it, the fear that can be stuck with it, right? Sometimes it's the idea that if you don't tithe, God's not going to give you anything else good, right? It becomes a Santa God thing. There's all that nonsense and superstition running around in our brains sometimes. It really is, I don't even know if it's running around in our brains, but it is running around in race consciousness. It is running around in that average thinking of race consciousness, as Ernest Holmes calls it. So that's what we're talking about today. If it's a hot button for you, buckle up, because we're going to move through it. But what we're looking at, as I have done my spiritual work over the past 20 years, to get rid of some of that baggage and some of those ideas, I've come to realize that, as I said, God doesn't need my money. God doesn't need my money. It's not about that. It's about the idea of universal spiritual truth, universal spiritual laws that work in our lives, just like the physical laws work in our lives. One of the ideas that I really resonate with comes from a book called The Power of 10 by R.F. Licari. And he says circulation is inviting abundant opportunity while selflessly releasing it. Inviting abundant opportunity while selflessly releasing it. And what I see is double open hands. Two open hands, where I'm inviting that abundance into my life at the same time that I am selflessly, unattached, giving it, circulating it, knowing that I am a conduit of the divine. I am a conduit of the divine. We talk frequently about how we must first become what we seek. We must first become what we seek, but that doesn't make sense when we think about it logically. How can I be something that I think I am not, that I think I have to get from outside of myself? Well, you probably heard the fallacy and all of that, didn't you? Yeah. So we have to first be that which we seek. If you're looking for more financial flow, you have to approach life from a prosperity belief system. From that prosperous way of being. That's how we approach life. If you're looking for a loving relationship, we must be love. We must approach life as love, giving love. Because life is about what? Energy and vibration, right? And it's impossible for love to find me if I'm not vibrating at love. It's impossible for my financial good to find me if I'm not vibrating to it. We call forth into our life that which we are. It is said that we attract people and things to us that are in alignment with either our level of woundedness or our level of wholeness. And here we teach practices and principles and ideas and ways that we can elevate, increase that vibration, that consciousness, that awareness back into our natural state of wholeness. Back into our natural state of wholeness. Ernest Holmes is the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living. He's also the author of The Science of Mind, which is a textbook that we teach from. He says that spirit, which is the creative life principle, is forever flowing through us. But we have been given the power to impede or even stop its progress within us. The example that he uses is a tourniquet. You know how a tourniquet works. If you put it on your arm and you leave it there for a while, all of the flesh and tissue and everything below it will die, won't it? Because it's been cut off from the circulation of the blood in the body. He goes on to say, in the same way, through our thinking processes, our ideas and our convictions, we use the tourniquets of negative thought and block the flow of creative life through us. The tourniquet of negative thoughts. Isn't that a great visual? That it cuts off the flow of spirit through us, that creative principle. So our beliefs that limit or hinder our experiences of life, that we get to choose. Because we have this beautiful thing called choice, don't we? Spirit's always around us, always pressing against us. It's not something we can ever get away from, but we do have the control, almost like a radio. We can turn it down. You ever got in a car with somebody and it's so loud? Or you come home and the TV is like so loud, and you go, oh, it's too loud for me. Turn it down. We have the same choice in the creative flow of spirit. It's up to us. We set our own limiting glass ceilings. We set those. Spirit doesn't. Spirit says, hey, I play all out. How do you want to play? How do you want to play? When we create from condition, we know that we receive more of the condition, right? We know that teaching. That's a basic fundamental of our teaching here. And slowing down our good happens when we control our willingness, if you will. It's related to our willingness to receive. Oh, that's too much. I couldn't possibly, right? Or our willingness to give and to circulate. One of the most powerful faculties that we have, Carla just sang about. Imagination. It's one of the most powerful things that every human being has. Mary Morrissey says, if you don't think you have a good creative imagination, let your spouse, grandchild, or child be an hour late coming home at midnight and see what story your mind makes up. You're very creative, aren't you? Yeah, all sorts of scenarios begin to run through. We're all creative. We all have imaginations. Have you ever listened to little kids playing? Oh my gosh, they're amazing. They make up whole worlds, don't they? Whether they're having a tea party with their stuffed animals and this long, drawn-out conversation, a whole thing going on, or it's their dolls, or maybe it's trucks, or it's a battle with the plastic cardboard swords, but they're real. They're real. We all have that. Do you remember doing that? Do you remember doing that as a child? Yeah. Playing with Barbies, making a fort, climbing a tree and being the lookout. Riding your bicycle with a baseball card tapped with a clothespin in the thing to sound like a motor, right? Yeah. We did those things, and when it sounded like a motor, we knew we were riding a motor. It didn't matter if our little legs were paddling as fast as we could. We still have that within us, all of us. But we would rather remember, oh, that happened before, I better be careful. Or, oh, well, I'd love that, but look at my life. I couldn't possibly have that. So we're stuck in the reality of today or the fear of the past and not allowing our imaginations to open us up to the infinite possibilities that our lives really are. That our lives really, really are. So studies have shown us that our minds wander from the task at hand or the minister's talk, right? They wander. If we sit through a lecture, be it my 20 or 30 minutes here or an all-day seminar, our minds at some point wander off, don't they? Am I the only one? Okay, I'm the only one. Very good. Studies say that on average, humans spend half of their waking hours with their minds wandering. Half of their waking hours. If we assume on a good day we get 8 hours sleep, we're up for 16. That's 8 hours of our mind wandering off from the task at hand. Ernest Holmes tells us what? Our lives are created through the tendency of our thinking. So what you thinking about in those 8 hours, you're not thinking about what you should be thinking about. That's what's creating our lives. Is your daydream, your wandering mind off in some wonderful place that you're creating, the life of your dreams, manifesting your goals, or is it in fear or unforgiveness or judgment or guilt? Where is your mind? The next time you're driving and you go, whoa, how did I get here? Think about where was I when I was not here? What was I thinking about? Try and capture that and begin to control that mind. Focus is something that is a key ingredient to manifesting what it is that we say we want to be different in our lives. Concentration. Ernest Holmes tells us that there's I've got a quote and I can't find it. Hang on. Never mind. Anyway, meditation is a great practice because what meditation will do for us is allow us to begin to learn to focus and to concentrate. When I first started, I couldn't do it. It was about a minute that I could stay focused until my mind would wander away again. And the more I practiced, the easier it got. And the point of meditation is not stopping all of our thoughts, because frankly, we can't do that. We just can't do that. The goal of meditation is to get in between, the gap in between the thoughts, and to have that expand more and more. As soon as you realize you're in the gap, you're thinking again, right? We're thinking again. So that's the purpose of our meditation. But what happens in meditation, it's how spirit communicates with us, isn't it? It's where the out-of-the-blue thoughts get created. It's where the new thoughts, oh gosh, I had never thought about it doing it that way. That's where that stuff comes from. The Edison stories that we hear of how he went into that semi-quasi-meditative state and he would take notes of all of the ideas. And then he would begin to look at those and go, this one's got energy around it. This one's got life to it. I'm gonna work on this one. He was a prolific inventor. But he was sourced from the invisible. He was sourced from the invisible. So we started out talking about the power of 10 and the idea of tithing. And many of us, as I said, have been turned off by the idea of tithing. And again, I think it's because it's been misunderstood, misinterpreted, miscommunicated, and used as a stick. Anybody felt beaten up by it? Yeah, it's been used as a stick in many traditional religions to convince people that they need to give. And again, God does not need our money. The spiritual practice of tithing is spiritual law. If we were going to build a sewer system, what would we do? We would first check the elevation of the ground, wouldn't we? Because we want to know, we want to design our system to flow with gravity. because we know sewage flows downhill, right? I cleaned that up. But we want to go with gravity and let it flow downhill, because when we have to take it uphill, we need lift stations and pumps, and it's a lot more expensive to lift that and maintain those stations than it is to allow gravity to flow. The same is true for us in all of these spiritual laws. They flow through us in a, not a downward, but they flow through, gravity's a good example for us, but they flow through us. And when we fight, we want to paddle upstream, as Abraham says, right? We want to fight it. We want to do it my way. We want to put in those lift stations. We want to put in those pumps rather than allowing the flow. And that's what we teach here, is ways to get in the flow of life and use universal spiritual laws the same way that we have learned to use the physical laws of the universe, the gravity, aerodynamics, electricity. We're going to see that movie next week about how we harnessed the physical law of electricity. And that's the same as our spiritual laws. So circulation is a spiritual law that allows us to use this natural downstream flow to create greater ease in our life. Does that sound like fun? A little more ease, a little more flow in the pipes, right? Not like Charlene, in the pipes. So it's founded in faith, and it requires our understanding that we are spiritual beings and that we are sourced from something greater than ourselves. Yesterday we had a process I'm going to share with you real quickly in the retreat, where we were invited to look at something natural. She brought an assortment of various things for us to just spend some time in a meditative contemplation about these items. And there was a series of questions that we explored. And it was all about getting in touch with things not created by humans. It was very powerful. Would you all agree? My board? Yes. It was very powerful to spend that probably 15 minutes contemplating things not made by man. And to recognize how much of life we didn't do. We didn't do. And in reality, we didn't do any of it, because all of the ideas for every creation on our planet came from the invisible source. And the same is true of this thing we call money. It flows to us out of the invisible resources that we all have, our wisdom, our intelligence, our knowledge, our creativity. All of those are then turned into this thing that we call financial flow in our lives. That's how it works. And we allow ourselves to be conduits of this. If I'm going to stop up the flow and hoard it and keep it close to me, the bucket gets full pretty quick, doesn't it? The bucket gets full pretty quick. It's like the tourniquet. It's like the stagnation and the congestion that begins to stagnate like a pond, as opposed to flowing like a stream that is nice and clean and fresh. And your spiritual home here, Scottsdale Center for Spiritual Living, is a tithing center. We teach the spiritual principle of tithing and this law of circulation. And not only do our donations support the ongoing operations of this center, I mean, we have to pay for the space, right? We have the office upstairs we have to pay for. Those are things we don't like to talk about in church, but we're all reality-based, right? We know we have to pay our mortgages or our rent, our car payments, our insurance, and the same is true here. The same is true here. So supporting a spiritual center assures that the spiritual center is there to support us, and that's a good thing. But the choice to circulate our good and selflessly release it does something that activates the spiritual law within us. So the idea of tithing is not really about the spiritual center as much as it's about you having a place where you can activate this. Now, can you do your donations to charities? Of course you can. You can do your donations any place you want to. You can circulate your good wherever you want to do it. But I'm going to suggest that we are here to learn and grow together, and if this is something we want to continue, then this might be a place to consider a tithe. But if not, again, God is our source. God is our source. So we anchor in that truth. But utilizing this law of circulation in your life is what is the tools that helps us to continue to activate those ideas within us. I mean, let's face it, in our world today, we need some financial flow of some sort in America to be able to take the ideas that we have and grow those and turn them into a substance. If we're going to make this music, if I got an idea for a creation, a music stand or something, I need some resources to create it, don't I? I need some resources, and having a few more dollars to create those resources may bring them to fruition a little more quickly. Having the resources that we need in order to have the lifestyle that we would like to have is a little more pleasing to us. To be able to take care of the maintenance on our bodies and on our homes and on our automobiles and our, our hygienic needs and our health and all of those things. That's just what makes life go around. And if we can step into a universal law of ease and grace and prosperity called the spiritual law of circulation, doesn't that make sense to up-level our lives? Yeah, it does. And this works not only in our financial life, but in all areas of our life, in our health. If we mistreat our bodies, if we don't exercise, eat right, take care of ourselves, our bodies stagnate, get congested, and become diseased, right? So the same thing works there. The prosperity of our bodies is our health and taking care of that. In our career, if we want to up-level our career, we give more where we are in it. Whatever that contribution to the world is, if you're working from your home or if you're working in a business someplace, by giving more to it, by being a better employee, manager, staff member, whatever, it prospers us, doesn't it? It prospers us. And also in relationships. To prosper our relationships, we are more loving in them. We give more love in them rather than resistance and anger and disagreement and all of those things. We put more love on it. And again, also in our finances. Ernest Holmes tells us it seems as though everything in life is meant to circulate, and the moment we stop the circulation, that very act stagnates what would have moved freely. It's the tourniquet again. So the key that activates this law in our lives is our beliefs. Our beliefs and our attitudes in the giving and the receiving. Do you get a paycheck or a bonus check and go, that's all? That's all? Some people do. Many of us do. I'm worth more than that. But if we took that and said, wow, I'm so grateful for this acknowledgement, for this bonus, for this raise, thank you so much. The gratitude elevates the gift. The gratitude elevates the gift. When we give generously and confidently, we allow for the flow and not the stagnation or the congestion in our lives. If we give from guilt or we're grudgingly giving, okay, I'll give you that, or giving to get, that's more likely what we do. I will give you 8 hours, but you got to pay me X. I'll give you an hour of my time, but what are you going to pay me for it? Right? That's the way life works usually. But what if we just gave freely? What if we just gave freely? Not all the time, maybe. Yes, we need to make an income. But what if we gave freely? How would it feel? How would it feel? I believe life is vibrational, and that when we can confidently give in joy, we align our vibration with this universal good. It can find me. It can find me at that point. It's like I'm ringing a bell, vibrating on the same plane. If I'm vibrating down here, it can't find me. I've got to come up to that level. I've got to come up to that level. So let's move into practicing the principles and see how we might use this and activate it in our lives this week. Number 1 is circulation. Again, giving without expectation of return. Giving in joy. The smile. Well, those people didn't smile back. I'm not going to smile at them anymore. I held the door for them. They didn't help. I'm not going to hold the door for them anymore. Giving without expectation of anything. Knowing that we are sourced. I've got more smiles to give. I've got more door handles I can open. I've got more boxes I can carry. Emmett Fox said, the law of circulation is that constant rhythmical movement is necessary to health and harmony. The opposite is congestion, and it may be said that all sickness, inharmony, or trouble of any kind is really due to some form of congestion. That's a big quote, isn't it? All form of sickness, inharmony, or trouble of any kind is really due to some form of congestion. That's big. If our circulatory system stops, our bodies die. If water gets dammed up into a pond, it stagnates, doesn't it? Stagnates. So this week, if you feel stuck in any area of your life, career, relationship, finance, whatever it might be, if you feel stuck, give. If your body's not feeling good and you're not feeling healthy, do something good for your body. Give it a gift. Give it a gift. If the if you're stressed for time, volunteer. If you're stressed for money, give money. If it's your relationship, give love. Number 2, why the 10%? I don't think anybody really knows. I think it's easy. I think it's part of our inherent 10-ness, 10 fingers, 10 toes mostly, most of us. It's enough to get our attention for us to go, ooh, 10%. 10%. And I think it's also enough that the universe, we raise our vibration. It allows us to raise up our vibration to a higher level, to a higher level. So I'm going to invite you to try it. If you're not a tither, and tithing is not just about a one-time donation. Tithing is about a practice. It's a spiritual practice that we give from a place of generosity. We give from a place of recognition, recognizing the sacredness of it. And we make it a practice. Whether it's the act of writing out the check, whether it's the act of the online donation process and recognizing when the thank you comes in, acknowledging that. Whatever your process might be, but make it sacred. No matter where you give, make it sacred. When you pay your bills, make it sacred. In gratitude for the power that comes into your home. Even in July, when the bill is outrageous. Grateful that we have it to keep us cool, right? And many times, again, we get caught in that, oh, God, I can't believe how much I'm paying the power company. As opposed to, thank goodness the power company's there. Thank goodness the power company's there. So when I got in the Science of Mind classes and started it, I had to heal all that old stuff that I was raised in. And I had to test it. And I tested it for 90 days. I did a practice, I documented it, and then I monitored it. Is this really improving my life? Where is it improving my life? And what I saw was that my life was blossoming in ways beyond my financial. And that's what I'm seeing now even in Prosperity Plus 2. I love this class with Lori and Mary Morrissey, and watching what's happening in the classroom with people as the abundance and the prosperity begins to flow through them, and the different ways that it's coming. Some is financial flow, some is through other things, and mine personally has been ideas, these invisible ways and realms of ideas that are coming that can be converted into bigger, better, broader opportunities in my life. So it's the resource of the invisible ideas that are flowing. So how does abundance and prosperity show up in your life? How does it show up in your life? Try this, and as Ernest says, don't take my word for it, prove the principle. Prove the principle to yourself in your own life. So I challenge you to start a spiritual practice of weekly giving and to monitor your results for 90 days and see how Spirit shows up. If it doesn't work, Spirit's not, if the law is not working for you, stop. Number 3, why give here? Why give here? It's twofold. Primarily, it is about your activating this law, this spiritual law in your life, practicing this law in your life, doing it in community with others where you can share that experience and what is unfolding for you. The other, of course, is the basics. It's stewardship of this community to keep it thriving, to keep it healthy, to keep it growing, so that we can be here to be together and be with each other. Now, I don't want anybody thinking that we're in financial trouble. We're not. We're not. We've got $20,000 in a CD right now that the board has placed into a higher yield CD than our savings account was getting us. And we've still got another 20 in the bank, in the checking account for day-to-day expenses. So we're okay. We're okay. It's not about that. We are an abundant center. I just want you to be an abundant center of Spirit, to allow it to blossom and bloom through you in all areas of prosperity in your lives. All areas. That's what's exciting for me. I know what it did for me in my life, and I want to see that in each of you. Whatever your dreams are, the financial, the career, the relationship, the health, I want to see that in your life. I want to experience that with you. We are a tithing community. We tithe 3% of our quarterly gross income to the home office, Centers for Spiritual Living, in support of their staffing, our education, our curriculum, all of those things. We tithe 7% of our quarterly contributions to Michael Gott, who does our music, our beginning and our ending song, to Karen Drucker, who does our offering song and our blessing song after our prayer. And then we tithe to places, we tithe to the Red Cross recently after the hurricane to support their support of people in the world who were struggling. We tithe to Dawn Curlin in support of her going to the Positive Music Awards in Florida because we support music and our musicians. We are a tithing community, so what you give us, we circulate out into the world. We circulate. We walk this talk. So remember the Emmett Fox quote about the law of circulation and constant rhythmic movement for health and harmony? He ends this essay by saying that some shut their minds to the reception of new truth, and this always produces mental congestion and a failure to demonstrate. Now, anybody experienced a cold or a sinus infection? Feels kind of yucky, kind of stuffy. Well, sometimes we get spiritual colds, don't we? Where it just doesn't feel like life's moving. Doesn't feel like it's going the way we want it to go. We just feel stuck. We might have a spiritual cold. And deepening into these practices is one way that we can alleviate the symptoms of that. So I want to thank you for being with me. I wish you health and prosperity this week. And would you join me in prayer this morning? So how good it is that we come together in spirit on this beautiful Sunday morning, recognizing that there is one power, one life, one mind, and that is God. It is the infinite presence, It is love and harmony, clarity, joy, prosperity, and abundance in all things. And all of it is here now, present, in, through, and as me, as an individualized and unique expression of it. And as I know this for myself, I know this for each one of us gathered here today, that we are all individualized, unique expressions of God, of this one presence, this one life. And so knowing that, I speak my word for and about each of us gathered here today, knowing the prosperity that we are, that we come from this place of knowing our inherent source is the divine, the infinite, and that we crash through any limitations we've placed, any glass ceilings we've placed, limiting the flow of good into our lives. Stepping into that creative faculty of our imaginations and allowing them to wander into the fullest expression of our own magnificence, allowing Spirit to guide us in those aha moments, those out of the blue and new thoughts for our greater yet to be in the unfolding of life through us as us. I speak a word of blessing on those that could not be with us today, whether they're feeling under the weather or facing broken pipes. We just bless all who are not able to be with us today, knowing that they're in their perfect and right places, and blessing each one that is here gathered in community, sharing in the one. And so with great gratitude, I just release this into the action of law, the activity of mind, knowing that it's done. God's got this. And we let it go and let it be. We affirm together by saying, and so it is.